All right, so section 1-1. All right, starting from the beginning again. A lot of this is basic algebra, and that's why I wanted to switch from the Saxon book to this book, is because I think you guys are struggling with your basic algebra skills. I never taught you, so I didn't know what your background is and that kind of thing. So I think we're going to go back and we're going to rehash some of the stuff that I think was a little bit lacking in your background. So let's start right now. Let's just do some basic exponent drills. Now, some of the stuff that we've hit in the other book is way, way beyond what we're doing now. All right, so we're going and we're starting basic level stuff. All right, so it might seem a little dry, but I think this will be good. It'll build a foundation for you. All right. Um, I'm taking these right from the examples. If you want to follow, you can. It's on page 5. All right, so 4 cubed. If I have 4 cubed, what does that mean? It means 4 times 4 times 4. Agreed? All right, and you just multiply all that together, and that's 64. Now it's pretty easy. Now, what if you had something like this? This is where people get a little confused, especially when you have negatives. Now look what's inside the parentheses. A -6 is in the parentheses, and what are you doing to that parentheses? You're squaring it. So look, watch, when I cubed it, I multiplied it everything by itself 3 times, right? When I square it, I just multiply everything by itself. So it's -6 times what? -6. -6 times -6. Negative times negative is positive 36. You get it? What if you had this, though? This is where people get a little bit messed up. There's a big difference between this first one that we did and this second one I just wrote down. There's a big difference between the two. This right here, you're squaring what? The negative and the 6, correct? What are you squaring here? Just the 6. So that negative is not being squared. So you just kind of float that negative out in front. You're only squaring the 6, which is 36, and negative out in front, so it's negative 36. Big difference, isn't it? Between positive and negative. Let's go back to this first one right here. Let's do this. What if I said -4 cubed in parentheses? Again, what are you doing? You're going -4 times -4 times -4. Now, eventually, you won't have to write all that stuff out. All right, I'm just doing it just to kind of teach you the process here. Now, let's take a look. It's negative times negative times negative. What's 3 negatives if I'm multiplying together? Is it?
Still negative.
Negative times negative is positive, and a positive times a negative is negative. So when I have 3 negatives and multiply them together, what's it going to come out to be? Negative, and then multiply the numbers, and that's a -64. You with me? What if we did this? What if I just put a negative and a 4 cubed? Still put the negative, right. And then you just go 4 cubed, which is 64. Look, you still get the same answer, don't you? But you get it 2 different ways. You got to understand. I got -64 completely different than what I got it right here. Does that make sense? Because I actually took those negatives and multiplied them 3 times. This one, I didn't multiply the negative by anything. I just stuck it out in front. Because the only thing I'm cubing is the 4 in this situation. So it's just -64. Even though you get the same answer, you got it 2 different ways. So that kind of shows us something. If I have, this is an even number too, isn't it? If I take it to an even exponent, for instance, let's take -3 and take it to the 4th power, okay? So let's see what we get. It's -3. Again, I'm just doing this for teaching purposes. Eventually you won't have to write all these out like this. So watch, negative times negative is positive, right? Times a negative is negative. Times another negative is positive. So this comes out to positive, what's that, 81? 3 times 3 is 9, and this 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 9 is 81, okay? So watch, when it is to a positive exponent, it absolutely makes a difference if, or I'm saying not positive exponent, an even exponent. If it's to an even exponent, all right, it definitely makes a difference what your answer is going to be. Because watch, what if I did this? What's happening here? Again, what's that negative do? It just floats out front, and that's a -81. Big difference between positive 81 and -81. You see that? All right, so if it's an even exponent, then look, your answers are going to be different, aren't they? If it's an odd exponent, it really doesn't matter how you think about it. It's always going to come out negative. Do you see it? All right, but I want you to understand what's really going on there. All right, that's good enough. Let's do this. Order of operations. Do you remember order of operations from Algebra 1? All right, we're going to learn, what did I call it? Order of operations, right? I'll just write that down. Order of operations. And I refer to that quite often. That's why I'm writing it down. And actually, I'll put this. You probably learned something like this, didn't you, back in the day? All right? PEMDAS, okay? Some people say PEMDAS or PEMDA. I never learned it like that. I just know what the letters stand for. The way to remember what order it's in, what would we just say? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. All right? It's not really what it stands for, but it's just a way that we can remember the order of this thing. All right, what is the P? I'm not going to write it down, but what does the P actually stand for? Parentheses, then what? Exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. You got it? Okay, so that's the order that you should do things in. So let's take a look at this example right here. All right, let's look at this problem right here. 6 divided by 3 plus 2 cubed times 5. So there's no parentheses, so we don't have to worry about that. In this particular situation, what do we do first? These kind of go together. See multiplication, division? You do multiplication, division pretty much at the same time. All right, and then you do any addition and subtraction. But what is here? There's no parentheses, but there are what? There's an exponent, isn't there? So let's do that first. Now, really, when you get used to these, you could have done this right away, but what's 2 cubed? It's 8. Okay, so what do? Okay, multiplication and division kind of go at the same time. So look, here's a division and here's a multiplication, right? So we do that at pretty much at the same time, all right? So 6 divided by 3, 2. Put a plus, and 8 times 5 is, what's that? Where's 3 from? It's a times. It's a times. 8 times 5. Okay, it's multiplication and division, right? So you basically do those at the same time. And now you just add those up now, and what do you get? You get 42. Let me just make up a simple one. They got a little bit more complicated, but here's one that a lot of people kind of mess up doing. Okay, that's multiplication. Look, a lot of people look at something like this, and what do you think like a little kid first learning this would do? They'd probably go 3 plus 2 is 5, and 5 times 5 is 25. But is that what you do? No, you got to go order of operations. You can't go 3 plus 2. You have to do any multiplication first, so you've got to do that first. So it's 3 plus what? 10, and that's 13. Make sense? All right, so make sure you don't just go in order. You look to see what's being multiplied or divided. You do that first, and then you can move on. All right, let's do one that's a little bit more complicated. All right, let's take a look at this one. Now, you see a big division right here, don't you? What I do when I see a big division sign like a fraction like this, what I do is I always do the top first, then I'll do the bottom, and then I'll see if I can do anything else with that, okay? So just look at the top right now. Just look at that, and let's figure out what the answer to the top is, and we'll do it, and we'll put the answer over here. Then, once I do that, then I come down here to the bottom, I work that thing out, and I'll put that on the bottom. Does that make sense? So let's go ahead and do that. Let's do the top. Well, do exponents first, right? So let's do this. Now watch. Here's a common mistake people make. And I'm going to show you something. The way you should think about it, it's still going to come out to the same answer as if you made a mistake on it. I'll show you what I mean. You can't go negative times negative is positive. You can't do that. All right, are you with me? What do you do first? You got to do this exponent first, because really this is kind of like a -1 out in front of here. So you do the multiplication after you do the exponents. So let's do the exponents first. So I'm taking -3 and I'm cubing it. So what does that mean? That's -27, isn't it? But what do we do with that? That floats out front, so it's... Now you might be able to just do that in your head, okay? But I want to show you exactly what the steps are. Okay, because if this was an even exponent, it wouldn't be this. It wouldn't come out to be the same thing. So you do the exponents first, -27, and negative out in front. What is that eventually going to be? It's going to be a +27. We'll write that down in just a second. Okay, I'll show the steps just so when you look back on it, you'll know why we did that. Now this says plus -5. What's an easier way to write than just plus -5? Just -5, exactly. So let's just write it like that. It's a little bit more concise. Got rid of the parentheses. You don't have to have 2 signs there. You with me? Okay, let's do the bottom. What do we do first? Well, we do the multiplication here, and there's multiplication here, isn't there? So let's do this. 2 times -8 is -16. And then, now look, a lot of people look at it, you could look at it 2 ways. I look at it like this. I look at it as a negative 5 times 3. What's negative 5 times 3? It's negative 15. Or some people look at it like this. Minus positive 15. Do you see it? Because 5 times 3 is 15, minus 15. It's the exact same thing, isn't it? Right? Negative 15 and minus 15 are really the same thing. That's right. You get the same answer. Thank you, Aubrey. So tempted to say that. Now watch. This is positive 27, isn't it? 27 minus 5 is 22. Negative 16 minus 15. Should be able to do this in your head. Add the opposite, or add a line, change signs. Mrs. Swam says. Okay, what is that? Negative 31. Now you could keep your answer like that, or you could put the negative out in front if you wanted to, couldn't you? Or really, you could put the negative up top if you wanted to. It's fine. If you just keep it like that, it's perfectly fine. Got no problem with that. But if you look in the book, it's on page 6. If you look in the book, they write it like this, put a negative out in front. But it doesn't really make any difference. Are we good with that? Let's do another type. Okay, here we go. Let's do this. You've seen this before, right? We did a bunch of these in the other book, so this should be pretty easy for you. I think it says, what's it say? Evaluate. All right. So it's just substitution, isn't it? They tell you what x, y, and z is, or are, whatever you want to say. All right. What's the right way to say that? They tell you what x, y, and z are, I guess. Yeah, because it's plural. All right, so you take this and you put it in for x. You take 5, you put it in for y, and you take a negative 3 and you put it in for z. And then you basically follow the same steps that we just finished doing. So let's do this. It's negative 4. Now watch, when I see an x, I'm going to put a parentheses there. I think that's very important. Don't get sloppy. Put a parentheses there and put what the x is. It's negative 2. What are you doing to that x? You're squaring it. Minus 7. Put a parentheses where the y is going to go. The y is 5, so you stick in a y. Or 5 for the y. Plus 4 times z. Put in negative 3 in for z. Right there. Now let's go through the order of operations. You're not going to go negative 4 times negative 2, are you? You do the exponents first. So it's negative 2 squared. I'm going to put a negative 4 right here. What is negative 2 in parentheses squared? It's negative 2 times negative 2, which is positive 4. It's positive 4. Okay, it's negative times negative, right? Which is positive. Let's do this. Here's a multiplication we can do, and here's a multiplication we can do. Right, so you're going to put minus 35, and what's this going to be? Minus 12. Very good. You see that? You don't go 5 plus 4, do you? All right, you do the multiplications first. One more multiplication, then we can add and subtract. It's negative 16 minus 35 minus 12, and then you just work that thing out. And that comes out to, I believe, negative 63. All right, you can do the arithmetic on it. There you go. What do you think? It's pretty easy stuff, isn't it? Yeah. Let's see what else. All right. All right, the next little part, they go through this. They go through some properties and things like that on page like 8 and 9 and 10. They talk about the commutative property, the associative property, all this. The one that I'm really concerned that you understand is the distributive property, and you've seen that plenty of times, haven't you? I mean, this is the one that's probably the most, I don't know, practical, I guess. Okay, the distributive property. So that's basically what I'm going to talk about. So this would be an example of the distributive property. You take A and you distribute, you multiply it through both of those things inside the parentheses. You could have a whole bunch of things in the parentheses. It's not always just 2, all right, but you could have something like that. So here's an example of what they're going to do. They're going to say, demonstrate, I think. Well, they say illustrate the distributive property. So if they give you this and they say illustrate the distributive property, then what are you going to do? You're going to take that 3, you're going to distribute it, and you get 3x plus 3y, and then you're done. That's all you got to do. There's really nothing to it. Make sense? All right. Yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. So that's it. That's your first lesson. And let me go get your worksheet copied and get it to you.